The millionaire judge ordered the hot dog vendor to pay $15,000, but months later, she became his boss. Before we begin, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 when it ends. Enjoy the story. The gavel hit the mahogany bench 3 times, and the sound echoed through the courtroom like a loud warning. Court is now in session. Case number 2847. City of Massachusetts versus Caitlin Marie Lowe. Caitlin felt the ground vanish beneath her feet when her eyes finally processed who was sitting in the judge's chair. No, it couldn't be. Jordan Hoffman adjusted his black robe, his face like it was carved from stone, his gray eyes scanning the documents with the same coldness he used when ordering mustard and onions on her hot dog every afternoon at 4. He didn't look at her. Not even once. Is the defendant present? His voice cut through the air like a blade. Caitlin stood up, her legs shaking so much she had to hold onto the bench in front of her. I am, Your Honor. It was only when she spoke that Jordan raised his eyes from the case file. His expression didn't change one bit. No sign of recognition. No surprise. Nothing. As if she were a complete stranger. As if he hadn't shown up at her cart every day for the past 6 months. Miss Lowe, Jordan began, his voice formal and distant. You are being charged with operating a business without the proper municipal license. Do you understand the charges? I do, but the fine was $15,000 with a 7-day deadline for payment. That deadline passed 3 days ago, correct? Caitlin clenched her fists. Your Honor, I don't have that kind of money. I work that cart to pay for law school. I'm in my final year. I graduate in 2 months. Do you or do you not have the $15,000? The question hit like a punch to the stomach. Direct, harsh, no room for explanations. I don't, Caitlin admitted, her throat tightening. Jordan wrote something down on the file. Did you make any attempt to get the proper license at any point in the last 2 years of operation? I tried, but the process was expensive and complicated. You thought you could just ignore the law? No. I thought I could sort things out little by little, but little by little, Jordan repeated. And for the first time, there was a different tone in his voice. It wasn't anger, it was worse. Disappointment. The law doesn't work little by little, Miss Lowe. The law is clear, objective, and equal for everyone. You're a law student. You should know that better than anyone. Caitlin felt her blood boil. With all due respect, Your Honor, not everyone has $15,000 set aside for emergencies. Some people have to choose between eating and dealing with paperwork. The silence that followed was deafening. Jordan stared at her for a long 5 seconds. Those gray eyes pierced through her, cold and calculating, analyzing every word, every breath. Are you saying financial hardship justifies breaking the law? I'm saying the law should have room for context. Context, Jordan repeated the word like it tasted bitter. He leaned forward slightly, hands clasped on the desk. Miss Lowe, right now, there are 53 cases waiting for trial in this courtroom. 53 people who also have their own contexts, their own stories, their own hardships. If I start judging based on feelings, where do I draw the line? Who decides what context is valid and what isn't? Caitlin opened her mouth to reply, but Jordan raised his hand, stopping her. The law exists precisely to eliminate subjectivity. To make sure a hot dog vendor has the same rights and responsibilities as a corporate CEO. The moment I allow exceptions based on compassion, I destroy the fundamental principle of justice. Each word was like a gavel strike. Precise, practiced, unforgiving. Caitlin felt tears burn in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. Not in front of the man who used to buy her hot dogs with that stone face, and who now was about to destroy everything she had worked for. Your Honor, she tried again, her voice cracking. I can pay in installments, $500 a month. It'll take time, but I promise. This court does not do installments, Jordan cut her off. This is not a department store, Miss Lowe. This is the federal justice system of the United States. He picked up his pen and began writing on the document in front of him. Caitlin watched every movement, feeling her future slipping away like sand through her fingers. My sentence is as follows, Jordan announced without looking up from the paper. You have 30 calendar days, starting today, to pay the $15,000 debt to the city of Massachusetts. If you fail to meet the deadline, Your equipment will be seized immediately, and you will face criminal charges for disobeying a municipal order, which could lead to up to 6 months in jail. The world stopped spinning. 6 months in jail. Prison. Your Honor, please. The decision has been made. Jordan struck the gavel. Next case. Caitlin stood frozen in place as the bailiff approached and gently tapped her shoulder, signaling that she had to leave. She looked at Jordan one last time. He was already flipping through the next file, his face completely indifferent, as if she had never existed. As if 6 months of shared routine had meant absolutely nothing. Caitlin left the courtroom on shaky legs, the sentence echoing in her head like a nightmare. Out in the hallway, she leaned against the cold marble wall and finally let the tears fall. 30 days, $15,000. 2 days later, Caitlin was at her hot dog cart when she saw the black Audi pull up. 3:40 in the afternoon. Right on time, as usual. Her blood boiled. Jordan got out of the car and walked over with the same blank expression he always wore, as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't just wrecked her life. The usual, he said. Caitlin looked at him. Really looked. For the first time in 6 months, she allowed all the anger she felt to show on her face. No, she said. Jordan frowned, genuinely surprised. Excuse me? I said no, I'm not serving you, not ever again. That's ridiculous. You run a business, I'm a customer. A customer? Caitlin gave a humorless laugh. You judged me and sentenced me 2 days ago, sat in that courtroom wearing your robe and decided that $15,000 was a fair price for my ignorance. And now you show up here like nothing happened, asking for a hot dog? Jordan stayed quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice had that same cold tone as always. I was doing my job. I followed the law. It wasn't personal. Maybe not for you, but for me. Caitlin took a deep breath to steady her voice. For me, it was very personal. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a cart to sell before your courthouse friends come and take it. She turned her back to him and began cleaning the grill. Jordan stood there for a few seconds. She could feel his eyes on her. Then she heard his footsteps walking away. When the black Audi disappeared into traffic, Caitlin let a few more tears fall. But along with the sadness, something new started to grow inside her. Determination. If Jordan Hoffman thought she was going to give up, he was terribly wrong. That night, Caitlin posted an ad online. Hot dog cart fully equipped, professional gear, urgent sale. 3 days later, she sold the cart for $12,000, $3,000 less than it was worth, to a man who bargained hard, knowing she was desperate. She borrowed the remaining $3,000 from an aunt she barely spoke to, promising to pay her back with interest. On the 28th day, Caitlin walked into City Hall and deposited the $15,000. The clerk stamped the receipt without even looking up, completely unaware that piece of paper represented 2 years of hard work and broken dreams. Caitlin walked out with no cart, no savings, but with a fire in her chest that wouldn't go out. Jordan Hoffman had followed the law. Coldly. Perfectly. Without mercy. And she would never, ever forget it. 2 months later, Caitlin graduated from law school. The ceremony was small. No family, no party. She received the diploma with the same hands that once made hot dogs. And something shifted inside her. The victim phase was over. The attorney phase had just begun. She sent out 23 resumes. 19 didn't respond. 3 sent automated rejections. 1 asked for an interview. Pinnacle Legal Associates, one of the most respected firms in Massachusetts. Caitlin showed up to the interview wearing her only suit, bought secondhand, and answered every question with the confidence of someone who studied law while sweeping streets and serving mustard. The senior partner, a 60-year-old man named Lincoln Palmer, smiled at the end. You've got fire in your eyes, young lady. When can you start? Tomorrow, Caitlin answered without hesitation. Perfect. Welcome to Pinnacle. Caitlin walked out of there floating. Finally, things were finally falling into place. The next day, she stepped into the firm with her heart racing. Glass walls, gray carpet, portraits of famous lawyers on the walls. Everything smelled of success and power. The receptionist led her into a conference room. Wait here. The attorney in charge of your training will be here shortly. Caitlin sat down, nervously smoothing out the skirt of her suit. The door opened, and to her surprise, Jordan Hoffman walked in. He stopped mid-step when he saw her. Something flickered across that stone-faced expression. Pure shock. Caitlin's eyes widened. What are you doing here? Jordan asked at the same time. They both froze, staring at each other like they were seeing a ghost. And then the truth hit Caitlin like a truck. The millionaire judge wasn't a judge anymore, and she was going to work directly with him. The silence in the conference room was so heavy, Caitlin could hear her own heartbeat. Jordan stayed by the door, his eyes locked on her, his face a mix of disbelief and something close to embarrassment. You work here? Caitlin finally managed to ask, hating how shaky her voice sounded. Jordan closed the door behind him and adjusted his tie, quickly regaining his composure. I do, and apparently so do you. I'm an intern, starting today. I figured. Caitlin stood, crossing her arms. I don't get it. You were a federal judge. What happened? Jordan walked to the table and placed a brown leather folder on it. For a moment, he seemed to consider whether or not to answer. Finally, he sighed. I was removed from the bench 3 months ago. Accusation of a conflict of interest in a case involving a friend's company. The investigation is still ongoing. Caitlin felt a strange twist in her chest. It almost felt like satisfaction, but there was real curiosity too. Were you guilty? Jordan's eyes met hers, cold as ever. No, but they removed you anyway? The law doesn't care about innocence during an investigation, only procedures. He said it without irony, like he was quoting a textbook. In the meantime, my assets were frozen and I had bills to pay. Lincoln Palmer offered me a position here. I accepted. Caitlin processed the information. The powerful Judge Jordan Hoffman, now just an associate lawyer. Part of her wanted to feel sorry for him. The other part, stronger and louder, remembered the $15,000 and the cold way he had slammed down that gavel. Well, she said, keeping her voice steady, I guess now you know what it's like to have your life turned upside down because of the law. Jordan stared at her for a long moment. Before Caitlin could say anything else, the door opened again. Lincoln Palmer walked in with his warm smile and a cup of coffee in hand. Great, you two have met? He pulled out a chair and sat down. Jordan, this is Caitlin Lowe, our new intern. Caitlin. Jordan will be your mentor for the next 6 months. Caitlin felt her stomach drop. Mentor? Yes. Jordan might be going through some personal things right now, but he's one of the sharpest lawyers I've ever worked with. You're going to learn a lot from him. Jordan didn't react, but Caitlin swore she saw a muscle twitch in his jaw. Lincoln went on, completely unaware of the tension in the room. I've got the perfect case for you two. Young client, accused of breaching a contract with a former employer. Simple, but it requires careful research. Jordan, you supervise. Caitlin, you handle the bulk of the legal research. Mr. Palmer, Caitlin began, choosing her words carefully. Is it possible for me to work with another attorney? Not that I don't appreciate the opportunity, but... Is there a problem with Jordan? Lincoln interrupted, raising an eyebrow. Caitlin looked at Jordan, who watched her with that annoyingly blank expression. She could tell him. She could explain about the trial, the $15,000, how that man had been her client for months, and then sentenced her without blinking. But that would sound like complaining, like weakness. Like she couldn't handle the situation. No problem, she lied. Perfect. Lincoln clapped his hands and stood up. The case files are in room 304. I want a preliminary report by tomorrow morning. Have fun. He left, leaving Jordan and Caitlin alone again. You could have told him the truth, Jordan said once the door closed. And you could have said you knew me when Lincoln hired me. I didn't know you had been hired. How convenient. Jordan picked up the folder and headed for the door. Room 304. 5 minutes. Don't be late. Wait. Caitlin took a few steps toward him. We need to set a few rules if we're going to work together. Jordan turned slowly. Rules? Rule number 1. What happened in court stays in court. Here we're just co-workers. Nothing more. Agreed. Rule number 2. You don't use your position to humiliate me or make me feel small. A strange look passed through Jordan's eyes. I would never do that. You literally sentenced me to jail 3 months ago. I followed the law. There's a difference. Caitlin took a deep breath, holding back the urge to argue. Third rule, absolute professionalism. No personal remarks, no stories from the past, no. Understood, Jordan cut in. Anything else? Caitlin paused for a moment. Just one more. If I ever prove I'm a better lawyer than you admit it. For the first time since he'd entered the room, Jordan almost smiled. Almost. If that day comes, Miss Lowe, I'll be the first to say it. He left the room, and Caitlin was left with a strange mix of anger and determination burning in her chest. 5 minutes later, she entered room 304. It was small, with a long table covered in files and a single window facing the parking lot. Jordan was already there, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, flipping through documents. "Sit down," he said without looking up. "Let's start with the basics. What do you know about breach of contract?" Caitlin pulled out a chair. "It happens when one party fails to meet the terms of a legally binding agreement. It can be due to non-performance, poor performance, or interference with the agreement." Jordan finally looked at her. "Impressive. Did you memorize the entire textbook?" "I didn't need to. I studied while selling hot dogs, remember?" The jab slipped out before she could stop it. Jordan stayed quiet for a moment, then slid a stack of papers toward her. "Our client is Tyler Morrison, 26, software developer. He worked at DataCore Solutions for 2 years, then left to start his own company. DataCore is suing him, claiming he violated the non-compete clause in his contract." Caitlin picked up the documents and started reading. "The clause says he can't work for a competitor for 18 months after leaving DataCore." "Correct, but he didn't go to a competitor. He started his own company, which technically still counts as competition." Jordan nodded. "DataCore says it does. Tyler says the clause is too broad and therefore unenforceable. Your job is to find case law that supports his side." Caitlin flipped through more pages. "When's the preliminary hearing?" "In 4 days." She looked up, surprised. 4 days? Is that enough time?" "For a good lawyer, yes." Jordan looked straight at her. "Are you a good lawyer, Miss Lowe?" That was a challenge, clear and direct. Caitlin met his eyes without blinking. "I think you're about to find out." Over the next 3 days, Caitlin buried herself in the files like her life depended on it. She arrived at the office at 6 in the morning and left at 11 at night. She read every relevant court decision, every academic article, every commentary on non-compete clauses. Jordan watched in silence, making occasional remarks, correcting her when needed. They kept things strictly professional, but the tension lingered, hanging in the air like static electricity. On Thursday night, Caitlin finally found what she was looking for. A 2019 case where the court ruled that overly broad non-compete clauses were unenforceable because they unfairly restricted the right to work. She practically ran to the room where Jordan was reviewing the final arguments. "I found it," she said, handing him the printed case. Jordan took it and read in silence. Caitlin watched his expression shift, surprise, then thoughtfulness, and finally, approval. "This case is perfect," he said. "How did you find it?" "I looked for cases where professional freedom outweighed corporate interests. I thought like someone whose life had once been controlled by rigid rules." The jab didn't go unnoticed. Jordan looked up from the papers. "You're good at this. Binding case law, turning personal experience into legal strategy." It was the closest thing to a compliment she'd ever gotten from him. Caitlin felt something strange in her chest, but pushed it aside. "Thank you. So we'll use this tomorrow?" Jordan nodded. "We will. Good work, Miss Lowe." And for the first time since they started working together, Caitlin smiled. The next morning, Caitlin arrived at the courthouse with her stomach in knots. Not because of the case itself, but because she was standing next to Jordan in the same building where everything had started months earlier. The memories were still too fresh. Tyler Morrison was waiting for them on the courthouse steps. He was a young man with messy brown hair, black-rimmed glasses, and a nervous expression that reminded Caitlin of herself during that fateful hearing. "Mr. Hoffman, thank you for coming," Tyler greeted Jordan, shaking his hand a little too firmly. "This is the job," Jordan said, then pointed to Caitlin. "This is Caitlin Lowe, my assistant on the case." Assistant. The word irritated Caitlin, but she kept her professional smile as she greeted Tyler. "I'm nervous," Tyler admitted as they walked up the stairs. "DataCore has a huge legal team. I'm just one guy who wanted to move on." Caitlin gently touched his arm. "We've got something better than a huge team. We've got the truth and the law on our side." Tyler seemed to relax a little. Jordan shot a quick glance at Caitlin, something unreadable in his expression. Inside the courtroom, DataCore's lawyer was already in place. Harold Pemberton was in his 50s, wearing a flawless pinstripe suit, carrying a leather briefcase, and flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hoffman," he greeted Jordan with a nod. "Heard you've taken a step down. Who would have thought we'd be facing each other instead of you sitting up there?" Caitlin saw Jordan's jaw tighten, but his voice stayed calm. "Pemberton, always a pleasure." "Pleasure?" Pemberton laughed. "Let's see if you still feel that way after I win this case." The judge entered, a middle-aged woman named Catherine Walsh, and everyone stood. Caitlin noticed how Jordan watched every move, every gesture in the courtroom with painful familiarity. This used to be his world. The hearing began with Pemberton presenting Datacorp's arguments. His voice was confident, almost smug. "Your Honor, the case is simple. Mr. Morrison signed a contract that clearly prohibits competition for 18 months after leaving the company. He broke that agreement by starting a business in the same field. The law is clear." Judge Walsh took a few notes. "Mr. Hoffman, your defense?" Jordan stood. Caitlin watched the transformation. His shoulders squared, and his voice took on a natural authority. He might not be wearing the robe anymore, but the judge was still there. "Your Honor, the clause in question is overly broad, and therefore unenforceable. It doesn't mention any geographic limits, doesn't clearly define what counts as competition, and essentially stops my client from working in his field. There is clear precedent for invalidating this kind of clause." Pemberton quickly stood. "Objection. The precedent the defense refers to doesn't apply in this particular case." "It absolutely applies," Jordan replied. "In the case of Commonwealth versus Tech Vision in 2019, this same court ruled that—" "That case involved a salesman, not a developer," Pemberton interrupted. Jordan turned to Caitlin, who immediately caught the signal. She opened the file and found the document they had prepared. She handed it to Jordan with a smooth motion. "Actually, Pemberton, the case involved a technical specialist, not a salesman. Page 17 of the ruling, paragraph 3. I can provide a copy to the court if needed." Pemberton stayed silent for 2 seconds too long. Judge Walsh raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Pemberton, I need to check my records, Your Honor." "Please do. In the meantime, Mr. Hoffman, go on." Jordan laid out his arguments with surgical precision. Every point had a solid base, every claim backed by case law. Caitlin watched, fascinated, realizing why he had once been such a respected judge. The man knew the law better than anyone. When the hearing ended, Judge Walsh said she would review the arguments and issue her decision in a week. Outside the courtroom, Tyler was glowing. "That was amazing, the way you took apart every one of his arguments, Mr. Hoffman. Miss Lowe deserves the credit," Jordan said, catching Caitlin off guard. "She found the case that supported our whole defense." Tyler turned to her with gratitude. "Really, thank you so much. You two make a great team." After Tyler left, Caitlin and Jordan walked in silence to the parking lot. Caitlin finally spoke. "You didn't have to give me credit in front of him." "Why not? You did the work." "Because I'm just the assistant, remember?" She couldn't help the sarcastic tone. Jordan stopped walking and looked at her. "I said that because it's technically your job title, not because I don't value your work." "Oh, good. For a second I thought you were being condescending. You've got a serious problem with authority, you know that?" "Only with authority that abuses power," Caitlin shot back. Jordan sighed and ran his hand through his hair, a rare sign of frustration. "Look, I know you hate me. I get why. But if we're going to work together, you need to separate what happened in court from what happens at the office. Funny. You had no trouble separating things when you judged me. 6 months buying hot dogs from me, and you didn't even blink when you sentenced me. Because I was a judge. My job was to apply the law, not make friends." "And look where that got you," Caitlin said, regretting it the moment the words left her mouth. Jordan's face went dangerously calm, the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. "You're right," he said quietly. "Look where it got me. The same place as you. So maybe we should stop attacking each other and just do our jobs." He walked to the car without looking back. Caitlin stood there, suddenly feeling strangely guilty. Back at the office, the tension between them was hard to ignore. They worked in silence the rest of the day, only speaking when it was absolutely necessary. It wasn't until Caitlin was packing up her things, getting ready to leave, that Jordan spoke again. "Your argument today was solid. The way you structured the research, the connection between the precedents. That was senior-level work, not something a regular intern would deliver. Caitlin looked at him, surprised. Thank you. But you need to control your emotions. In court, in front of clients, you can't let personal feelings show. Like you do, right? Cold as ice, never letting anything affect you. Jordan looked at her for a long moment. You think that's easy for me? You think I don't feel anything? Honestly? Yes, that's exactly what I think. He gave a bitter half-smile. Then you don't know me at all, Miss Lowe. The following week, a routine started to form. Caitlin arrived early, dove into the case files, and did thorough research. Jordan supervised, corrected, and taught. They kept things professional, but something was shifting. Caitlin began to notice the little things. How Jordan always made sure there was fresh coffee if he arrived first. How he never interrupted her when she was deep in focus. How his comments, while direct, were never harsh. And then came the phone call. It was Tuesday afternoon when Jordan's phone rang. Caitlin watched his expression change as he answered. Yes, I understand. When? All right, thank you for letting me know. He hung up and just stood there, staring at the phone. What is it? Caitlin asked. Jordan looked up, and for the first time she saw something that looked like genuine vulnerability. The investigation about my removal. They found inconsistencies in the original complaint. Caitlin's heart sped up. That's good, right? It might be, or it might mean nothing. They're reopening the review, doing new interviews. He exhaled slowly. It could take months. Caitlin found herself wanting to comfort him but wasn't sure how, so she did the only thing that felt right. Need help? Going over documents? Looking for inconsistencies? Anything? Jordan looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Why would you do that? Because, Caitlin said slowly, despite everything, I know injustice when I see it. Thank you, Miss Lowe. That night, Caitlin stayed late at the office, reviewing the documents Jordan had shared about the investigation. Piles and piles of papers, testimonies, emails, case records. Her eyes were burning when she found something interesting. Jordan? She called, holding up a document. Can you come here a second? He walked over, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He handed one to her. Coffee at 9 at night? Are you trying to kill me or keep me awake until the end of the world? Caitlin joked, but took the cup anyway. Thought you might need it. You have that look, like you're either about to discover something important or pass out. Hard to tell which. Caitlin took a sip and made a face. This isn't coffee. This is jet fuel in disguise. It's strong, I know, but it works. If the goal is to make me see the future, it's working. She set the mug down and pointed at the document. Look at this. The complaint against you came from a company called Westfield Consulting, right? Right. They claimed I showed favoritism to a friend's company in a trial. But look at the date. The complaint was filed 3 days before the trial even happened. Jordan frowned, grabbing the paper. What do you mean? Exactly. How does someone report a conflict of interest in a case that hasn't even been tried yet? Unless they knew ahead of time I'd be the judge, Jordan said, eyes widening, and wanted me out of the way. Caitlin nodded, adrenaline kicking in. Who else had a stake in the outcome of that case? Jordan started flipping through the files quickly. The opposing party was Northgate Industries, a construction company being sued for breach of contract. And what if Westfield Consulting has some connection to Northgate? So the whole complaint was a setup to get me removed and replace me with another judge. Jordan ran a hand over his face. I need to check the corporate records, see if there's any link between these companies. Caitlin was already typing on the computer. I'm on it. Do you know how to hack government systems? What? No. Just kidding, but the look on your face was priceless. She laughed, her fingers flying over the keyboard. I'm only accessing public records, totally legal. You can relax. Jordan shook his head, but Caitlin swore she saw the corner of his mouth twitch slightly. 15 minutes later, she found it. Here, the CEO of Westfield Consulting is Gregory Westfield. And guess who's on the board of Northgate Industries? Gregory Westfield, Jordan murmured, leaning in to see the screen. Bingo. They set everything up, filed a fake complaint to get you off the case because they knew you couldn't be swayed. Jordan stayed silent, thinking. Caitlin could see the gears turning in his head, connecting the dots, building the case. This doesn't prove anything for sure, he finally said. It's all circumstantial. For now, but it's a start, and if we keep digging, I bet we'll find more connections. Jordan looked at her with a strange expression. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Helping me. After everything. Caitlin leaned back in the chair, thinking about it. You know that phrase about knowing the law but choosing justice? You taught me to know the law. Now I'm choosing justice. I never said that. No, but you live it. Ironically, the same thing that hurt you is what made me respect your work. She gave him a crooked smile. Besides, I'm stubborn. If I think something's wrong, I can't just ignore it. I've noticed. In the following days, Caitlin and Jordan worked together, investigating the ties between Westfield and Northgate. It was slow, tiring work, but every little discovery brought them closer to the truth, and closer to each other. On Thursday, Caitlin brought sandwiches for lunch and found Jordan trying to fix the office printer, which had jammed for the third time that week. Need help, or are you going to keep hitting it until it confesses its crimes? Caitlin asked, leaning on the doorway. This cursed machine doesn't work. Have you tried asking nicely? Jordan looked at her with a mix of frustration and amusement. Are you suggesting I talk to the printer? Hey, you talked to me when I sold hot dogs. Oh wait, no, you just grunted your orders. I didn't grunt. One hot dog, mustard and onions, Caitlin imitated his deep, serious voice. Sounded exactly like a fancy grunt. Jordan gave up on the printer and turned toward her. I was polite. You were robotic. And yet you served me every day. You were a paying customer. I would have served a bear if it had $5. Caitlin held out the sandwich. Now eat this before I change my mind. Jordan took the sandwich, and for the first time, she saw what looked like a full, genuine smile. Thanks. You're welcome, Your Honor. I'm not a judge anymore. Once a judge, always a judge. It's like royalty. You can lose the crown, but the fancy posture stays forever. Fancy? Extremely. You walk like the floor should thank you for letting your expensive shoes touch it. Jordan laughed, a real laugh, short but sincere. You're impossible. I've heard that before, usually from people who later admit I was right. They ate in a quiet, easy silence, completely different from the tension of the first few days. Caitlin realized she was starting to see Jordan not as the cold judge who once sentenced her, but as a complex man with his own battles. On Friday afternoon, Lincoln Palmer called them both in for a meeting. I have a new case, he announced, sliding a thick folder across the desk. It's big, complicated, and I need my best talent. Caitlin glanced quickly at Jordan. A woman named Diana Foster is being accused of corporate fraud, Lincoln continued. She was the CFO of a tech company and allegedly embezzled funds, but she swears it was all a setup. A setup? Caitlin repeated, feeling a strange chill of recognition. Exactly. She says someone planted false evidence to frame her. The trial starts in 6 weeks. Jordan picked up the folder and started flipping through it. At first glance, the evidence against her looks solid. Yes, that's why I need both of you to dig deep. Find the cracks. Prove she's innocent. Caitlin felt the weight of the responsibility. Mr. Palmer, I'm just an intern. I'm not sure if... You found the legal loophole that won the Morrison case, Lincoln interrupted. And I've heard you're helping Jordan with his personal investigation. You've got good instincts, Caitlin. Trust them. After Lincoln left, Caitlin looked at Jordan. A corporate fraud case, that's big. It is, and we need every second of the next 6 weeks to get ready. Then we'd better start now. They dove into the files for the Diana Foster case. The more they read, the more Caitlin felt something was off. The evidence was too neat, too organized, like someone had carefully arranged every piece of the puzzle. Jordan, look at this. Caitlin pointed to a series of bank transfers, all made at exactly 2:47 a.m., 3 weeks in a row. So? Who makes illegal transfers at the exact same time like that? It's like leaving a signature. It feels intentional. Jordan leaned in, studying the documents. You might be right. Someone wanted those transfers to be found. Exactly. The question is, who benefits from Diana Foster going to jail? They spent the whole weekend buried in the case. Caitlin barely slept, her mind going over the strange patterns in the evidence again and again. There was something there, hidden between the lines. On Monday morning, she showed up at the office with dark circles under her eyes, but with a theory. What if the chief accountant was involved? She said to Jordan as soon as she saw him. He had access to the same systems Diana did. He could have made the transfers and changed the records to make it look like she did it. Jordan thought about it. We need proof. System access logs, emails, anything that shows he had a motive. I already requested the logs. They should arrive today. Jordan looked at her with something close to admiration. You don't sleep, do you? I do, just not much. Caitlin gave a tired smile. Coffee is my best friend now. Coffee and stubbornness. Good combination. The logs arrived late that afternoon. Caitlin went through them line by line, looking for anything unusual. And then she found it. Jordan, she almost shouted. The accountant, James Peterson, logged into the financial system 15 minutes before every suspicious transfer. And look at this. He sent an email to an outside address right after each one. Jordan came over quickly, reading over her shoulder. This is evidence of conspiracy. It's proof that Diana Foster was telling the truth. Caitlin felt a wave of satisfaction. She was framed. Just like you were. They looked at each other, and something passed between them. A quiet understanding. They both knew what it was like to be falsely accused, to have your life turned upside down by a well-told lie. We're going to prove it, Jordan said with conviction. We're going to clear her name. And Caitlin realized she wasn't just working out of obligation or pride anymore. She was working because she believed in it. Because now she understood what Jordan had always said about the law. It wasn't perfect, but when used the right way, it could be the most powerful tool for justice. The next morning, Caitlin was in the conference room organizing the Diana Foster case files when she heard raised voices in the hallway. One of them was unmistakably Jordan's. I'm not discussing this now, Gregory. Caitlin quietly stepped closer to the door and saw Jordan face to face with a man in a gray suit, gray hair, and an expression full of arrogance that she instantly disliked. You've always been stubborn, Hoffman, the man said with a fake smile. But this time your stubbornness is going to cost you. Get out of my office. Technically, it's not your office. You're just an employee here, remember? Just like I was just an honest businessman when you judged me. Something clicked in Caitlin's head. Gregory Westfield, the man behind the false accusation against Jordan. What do you want? Jordan asked, his voice dangerously calm. I want you to stop digging where you shouldn't. I hear you're investigating your own case. That's pathetic, Hoffman. Accept that you made mistakes and move on. The only mistakes were the ones you created. Gregory stepped closer. Careful with your words. Defamation is a crime. So are perjury and obstruction of justice. That's when Caitlin decided to step in. She opened the door fully and walked into the hallway with a bright smile. Hi, sorry to interrupt this fascinating reunion of former enemies, but Jordan, Lincoln's looking for you, said it was urgent. Jordan looked at her, surprised. Gregory turned too, sizing her up with cold eyes. And you are? Caitlin Lowe, intern, amateur investigator, and defender of lost causes. Nice to meet you. She held out her hand with exaggerated cheer. Gregory ignored it. An intern. How lovely. I know, right? I'm just full of charm, Caitlin said, keeping her smile. But seriously, Jordan, Lincoln seemed pretty impatient. Something about that case we're working on, the corporate fraud one, with all the planted evidence? She emphasized the last words while looking directly at Gregory. The man visibly stiffened. Planted evidence? He repeated, yeah. You know how it goes. Someone setting someone else up, creating fake proof, ruining reputations, terrible things done by terrible people. Caitlin tilted her head. But I'm sure you don't know anything about that, do you? Gregory looked from Caitlin to Jordan, then gave a forced smile. I have better things to do than talk to insolent interns. Hoffman, you've been warned. He walked off, and as soon as the elevator doors closed, Jordan turned to Caitlin. Lincoln's not really looking for me, is he? Of course not, but that guy needed a distraction before you did something you'd regret. Like punch him in the face? Exactly, and that would set back your whole rehabilitation process. Caitlin crossed her arms. So, that was the famous Gregory Westfield? It was, and he came here to threaten me. I noticed. He looks like the kind of guy who threatens people before breakfast. Jordan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. So he's nervous. The investigation must be getting close to something. Good. Nervous people make mistakes. Caitlin smiled, and we'll be right here to catch every single one. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Caitlin was in the records room looking for old files when she found a box with Jordan's name on it. Curiosity won over professionalism, and she opened it. Inside were newspaper clippings, every one of them about cases Jordan had presided over. She started reading and was surprised. Case after case of Jordan standing up for the underdog, making rulings that protected regular people against powerful corporations. Find something interesting. Caitlin jumped, nearly dropping the box. Jordan stood at the door, watching her. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be going through your stuff. Jordan walked in and picked up one of the clippings. This was my first case as a judge. A family was being evicted by a bank. I found a loophole that gave them 6 more months to get their finances in order. Why do you keep these? To remind myself why I chose to become a judge. He placed the clipping back, to remember that the law can be more than punishment, it can be protection. Caitlin looked at him differently now. You really believed that? I still do. Then why were you so hard on me in court? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Jordan was silent for a long moment. Because that day I was tired. I'd already ruled on 12 cases before yours, all of them involving people trying to bend the law. When you walked in, I was already numb. He looked at her. That's not an excuse, but it's the truth. You could have given me a chance. I know, and I regret it. The words hung between them. Caitlin hadn't expected such honesty. Before she could say anything, Jordan's phone rang. He answered, and Caitlin saw his expression shift. I understand. Yes, I'll be there tomorrow. He hung up and looked at Caitlin with a strange expression. The investigation into my report. They want to interview me again. They found something. Is that good or bad? I'm not sure. But I need to be ready. That night, Caitlin helped Jordan review every document and piece of evidence they had on Westfield. They worked late into the night, and at one point, Lincoln walked past the office. You two are still here? He shook his head with a smile. Go home. Rest is part of the job too. Just 30 more minutes, Jordan promised. Once Lincoln was gone, Caitlin yawned. He's right, my brain's turning into mush. Mush is nutritious, not when it's made of fried brain cells. She laughed, closing a folder. You know, when I started here, I never imagined I'd be helping you with anything. And I never imagined I'd need help from someone I sentenced. Life's funny. It's ironic. That too. Caitlin grabbed her bag. Good luck at the interview tomorrow. Don't let them rattle you. Hard to rattle me after dealing with you. Hey, I'm not intimidating. I just persistently challenge people. Jordan almost smiled. Good night, Miss Lowe. Good night, Your Former Honor. The next day, Caitlin spent the whole day nervous, waiting to hear from Jordan. When he finally returned to the office late in the afternoon, she practically ran to him. Well, what happened? Jordan pulled her into the conference room and closed the door. They have a whistleblower. Someone from inside Westfield Consulting who's willing to testify that Gregory made the whole complaint up. Caitlin felt her heart race. That's amazing. Who is it? I can't say yet, but the investigation's moving fast. They could have a decision in a few weeks. Jordan, that means you might get to be a judge again. He nodded slowly, but his expression was odd. Maybe. Why don't you look more excited? Jordan looked out the window. Because if I go back, it means leaving Pinnacle. It means leaving. He didn't finish the sentence, but Caitlin understood. It meant they wouldn't be working together anymore. And surprisingly, that idea bothered her more than she expected. Well, she said, trying to sound cheerful, then we better make the most of the time we have. And who knows, maybe I'll drop by your courtroom just to bug you. You totally would. Absolutely. They laughed, and the tension eased. But something had changed. A new awareness that their time working together might be coming to an end. And neither of them quite knew how they felt about that. 3 days later, Caitlin and Jordan presented the evidence about James Peterson to the prosecutor handling the Diana Foster case. The reaction was immediate. Peterson was summoned for questioning and, faced with access logs and suspicious emails, he confessed everything. He had set Diana up so he could take her job as CFO. When Diana Foster heard the news, she showed up at the Pinnacle office with tears in her eyes. You saved my life, she said, holding Caitlin and Jordan's hands. I was about to lose everything. My career, my reputation, my freedom. We were just doing our job, Jordan said with his usual modesty. Caitlin, though, couldn't help herself. Actually, it was mostly my job. He just supervised while I did the hard part. Jordan gave her that look that said, "Really?" Diana laughed. "Well, thank you both, especially this persistent young lady." After Diana left, Jordan turned to Caitlin. "Mostly your job?" "It was. You were too busy being all serious and reflective. I was busy doing the actual digging. I went through every document with you." "Yeah, but who found the time overlap?" "Me. Who suggested looking into Peterson?" "Me. Who saved the day?" "Me again." "Your humility is truly inspiring. I learned from the best." "Oh wait, no I didn't. You're never humble." Jordan opened his mouth to reply, but Lincoln appeared in the doorway. "Caitlin, Jordan, my office. Now." His serious tone made them exchange worried glances. They followed Lincoln into his office, where he sat behind his huge desk and watched them for several long seconds. "The Diana Foster case was handled brilliantly," he finally said. "Thank you, sir," Jordan replied. "I'm not talking to you, Jordan." Lincoln looked straight at Caitlin. "I'm talking to her." Caitlin blinked, surprised. "I thank you? I spoke to the prosecutor. He told me it was your research, your theory about Peterson, that cracked the case. Jordan just supervised." "Well, he did more than just—" "Caitlin," Lincoln interrupted, "just accept the compliment. You did an outstanding job, senior-level work." He leaned back in his chair. "The other partners and I had a meeting yesterday. We'd like to offer you a position as junior associate." Silence filled the room. Caitlin felt her heart pounding. "Junior associate? But I've only been an intern for a few weeks. And you've already proven more capable than lawyers with years of experience." Lincoln slid a contract across the desk. "Competitive salary, your own office, and you'd skip the rest of the internship phase. Interested?" Caitlin looked at Jordan, whose expression was hard to read. It wasn't anger, it looked like pride, and maybe something a bit more complicated. Yes, of course I am." "Great, you start Monday." Lincoln smiled. "Congratulations, Attorney Lowe." As they left the office, Caitlin was floating. Junior associate. Her. The former hot dog vendor. "Congratulations," Jordan said, and his voice sounded truly sincere. "Thank you. You know what this means, right? That you're going to have a ton of work? That technically I outrank you now in the office hierarchy." Caitlin grinned. "You're an associate. I'm a junior. Junior comes before associate." "That's not how it works." "It's exactly how it works. I just became your boss." Jordan shook his head, almost smiling. "This is going to your head, isn't it?" "It already has. I'm on cloud 9. By the way, as my first official order, I want coffee." "Go get it." "No." "That was an order, employee. You're not my boss. Hierarchically, I am. Lincoln just said it. He said you're a junior associate, not my supervisor." Caitlin crossed her arms and put on a fake serious face. "Jordan Hoffman, as your superior in the office chain of command, I order you to properly acknowledge my promotion." "And how exactly am I supposed to do that?" "By admitting I'm brilliant." "You're competent." "Brilliant." "Competent and occasionally insightful." "Brilliant, amazing, and absolutely essential." Jordan looked at her, then did something completely unexpected. He smiled, a real, full smile. "You're impossible. And brilliant. Don't forget brilliant." That night, Caitlin was packing up her things to move into the new office when her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello? Miss Lowe?" The voice was female, nervous. "My name is Patricia Drummond. I work at Westfield Consulting. I need to talk to you about Jordan Hoffman." Caitlin felt her whole body tense. "How did you get my number?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is that I have information that could help Jordan. But I need guarantees." "What kind of guarantees?" "Protection. Gregory Westfield is a dangerous man. If he finds out I'm talking to you, you're the whistleblower in the investigation." Silence on the other end. Then, in a quiet voice, "Yes." Caitlin shut the office door. "What do you know?" "Everything. I was Gregory's assistant when he made up the complaint against Jordan. I have emails, recordings, documents, everything that proves it was a setup." "Why are you doing this?" "Because I had a daughter." Patricia's voice broke. She was falsely accused of something she didn't do. Lost her job, her reputation. It ended badly. When I saw Gregory doing the same thing to Jordan, I couldn't stay quiet. Caitlin felt a lump in her throat. "I'm so sorry about your daughter. Just promise me one thing. Take Gregory Westfield down. Make him pay for what he did. We'll get justice. I promise." When Caitlin hung up, she found Jordan standing in the doorway. From the look in his eyes, it was clear he'd heard everything. "Patricia Drummond," he said quietly. "So it was her. Jordan, with her testimony, you'll be reinstated. Your life goes back to normal." He nodded slowly, but didn't look happy. "Yes, back to normal. Why don't you look excited?" Jordan looked at her for a long moment. "Because normal means leaving this place, leaving Pinnacle, leaving everything." But Caitlin understood. Leaving her. And surprisingly, painfully, she realized she didn't want him to leave either. The next morning, Caitlin arrived at her new office and found a box on her desk. Inside was a small wooden gavel with a little plaque. "For the most stubborn lawyer in Massachusetts." She knew exactly who had left it. She crossed the hallway to Jordan's office and knocked on the open door. He was on the phone, but motioned for her to come in. "Yes, I understand. Thursday at 10. I'll be there." Jordan hung up and looked at her. "Good morning, Counselor Lowe." Caitlin held up the gavel. "Was this you?" "Seemed appropriate. You like slamming gavels on things." "I don't slam gavels on anything yet." "Give it time." Jordan leaned back in his chair. "That was the district attorney's office. They want my formal statement about Gregory Westfield on Thursday. With Patricia's testimony, they've got a solid case." "That's great news." "It is." But his tone didn't match the words. Caitlin sat down in the chair across from his desk. "Why is it that every time you get good news, you look like you're headed to a funeral?" "I don't." "You do. You've got that 'I'm chewing on a lemon but pretending it's dessert' face." Jordan almost smiled. "That's a very specific description. I pay attention. So what's bothering you? Isn't going back to being a judge what you always wanted?" He was silent for a long moment, fingers tapping lightly on the desk. "It's complicated." "Complicated how?" "Explain it to the stubborn lawyer here. When I was a judge, I was sure of everything. The law was clear, black and white, right and wrong." Jordan looked out the window. "But now, working here, seeing the other side, it's not as simple as I thought." "You're saying you had an existential crisis?" "I'm saying I learned things. About justice, about people, about—" He paused, as if he wasn't sure how to finish. "About me?" Caitlin asked, her voice softer than she intended. Jordan looked at her. "About you, too." The air in the room shifted. Caitlin felt her heart pick up speed and forced a laugh to break the tension. "Well, at least I'm making you question your absolute truths. That's progress. Or the beginning of my professional downfall." "Same thing." They both laughed, and the tension dissolved. But something had changed. A line had been crossed, even if just slightly. That afternoon, Lincoln called Caitlin into a meeting with an important client. When she walked into the conference room, she nearly tripped. Gregory Westfield was sitting at the table. "Ah, the famous intern turned attorney," he said with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Quite the meteoric rise." Caitlin looked at Lincoln, confused. "Mr. Palmer, what's going on?" "Mr. Westfield needs legal representation," Lincoln explained. "He's being investigated for charges he believes are baseless, and he reached out to us." "You can't be serious." Gregory leaned forward. "I'm willing to pay very well. After all, you're the best, aren't you?" Caitlin felt her blood boil. "We can't represent him. There's a clear conflict of interest." "What conflict?" Gregory asked innocently. "Because you're working with Jordan Hoffman? He's no longer a judge. He's just a lawyer, like me." Lincoln looked between them. "Caitlin, can we talk in the hallway?" Outside, Lincoln closed the door. "I know there's history between Westfield and Jordan, but this firm can't turn away paying clients without a solid legal reason." "Legal reason?" "He set Jordan up. He faked evidence." "Allegedly. That hasn't been proven in court yet." Lincoln sighed. "Look, I don't like him any more than you do, but if we turn him away without proper justification, he could sue us for discrimination." "Then give the case to someone else, not me." "He specifically asked for you, said he was impressed with your work on the Foster case." Caitlin felt sick. "That's ridiculous. It's strategy. He wants to pull you away from helping Jordan." Lincoln placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to take the case, but know that if you refuse, he'll use that against us." Caitlin walked back into the room, where Gregory was waiting with that smug smile of his. "So, Counselor Lowe, will you represent me?" "No." The word came out firm and clear. "Find another lawyer. There are thousands in Massachusetts." Gregory slowly stood up. "What a shame. I thought you were a professional. but I see personal feelings matter more than professional ethics. Professional ethics are exactly why I'm saying no. I know you're guilty. Careful with baseless accusations, Miss Lowe. Slander is still a crime. It's not slander if it's true. Gregory's eyes turned cold. You'll regret this. I doubt it. He left, slamming the door behind him. Lincoln looked at Caitlin with a mix of concern and admiration. You know he might cause trouble for you, right? Let him. I'm not going to help the man who destroyed Jordan's career. When Caitlin told Jordan what had happened, he looked visibly surprised. You turned him down? Of course I did. Did you expect me to say yes? I expected you to think about your career. Turning down a major client on your first day as a junior attorney. My career will survive. Your reputation was already ruined once. I won't help give him a second chance to do it again. Jordan looked at her in a way that made her stomach tighten. Why did you do that? Because it was the right thing to do. Caitlin? No. She cut him off. Don't thank me or try to make me feel like it was a hard decision. It wasn't. Westfield is a liar, and I don't work for liars. Even if it hurts your career, especially if it hurts my career, some things matter more than promotions. She crossed her arms. Besides, if Lincoln fires me for having principles, then this isn't the right place for me. Jordan stayed quiet, then did something unexpected. He stood up, walked over to her, and for a moment it looked like he might hug her. But he stopped just inches away. Thank you, he said softly. You're welcome, your former honor. That evening, as Caitlin was leaving the office, she found Jordan still at his desk. Do you live here now? She asked, leaning against the doorway. I'm reviewing my testimony for Thursday. It has to be perfect. It will be. You're a perfectionist, even when you breathe. Is that a compliment or a criticism? Both. Caitlin walked in and sat down. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you regret it? Judging me the way you did? Jordan stopped writing and looked her in the eyes. Every single day. The raw honesty in his voice caught her off guard. I was so focused on following the law that I forgot the law is meant to serve people, not the other way around, he continued. You were trying to build a better life, and I ruined it with one signature. You didn't ruin it. You just sped it up. Caitlin gave a small smile. If it weren't for that fine, I'd still be at that cart, putting off my dreams. In a way, you forced me to take the next step. That doesn't make it right. No, but it's part of how we got here. She stood up. Now go home. You need to rest before your testimony. Are you giving me orders again? Always. I'm your supervisor now, remember? Jordan shook his head, but he was smiling. Good night, Caitlin. It was the first time he had ever called her by her first name. Good evening, Jordan. And for the first time, she realized she no longer saw him as the cold judge who had sentenced her. She just saw a man trying to do his best. Just like her. On Thursday morning, Caitlin waited outside the hearing room while Jordan testified. She wasn't allowed in, but Patricia Drummond was inside, along with prosecutors and investigators. 2 hours went by. Caitlin had already had 3 cups of coffee and was starting to consider a 4th when the door finally opened. Jordan came out looking tired but relieved. Behind him, Patricia Drummond walked out quickly, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Well? Caitlin asked as soon as they stepped into the empty hallway. She turned everything in. Emails, recordings, internal documents from Westfield Consulting. All of it proving that Gregory made up the charges against me. That's incredible. The prosecutor said they'll drop the charges against me by the end of the week, and they're opening a case against Gregory. Caitlin didn't think twice. She hugged Jordan right there in the courthouse hallway. He stiffened for a moment, clearly surprised, but then his arms wrapped around her too. You're getting your life back, she whispered against his suit. Yes, Jordan said, though he didn't sound as happy as he should have. When they pulled apart, there was a strange tension in the air. Caitlin cleared her throat and stepped back. Well, I think this calls for a celebration. How about a hot dog? Jordan laughed, genuinely. You're really never going to let that go, are you? Never. It's part of our story now. Our story, he repeated, like he was testing the words. They ended up at a small cafe near the courthouse. Caitlin ordered an absurdly large sandwich, and Jordan watched as she tried to figure out how to take a bite without making a total mess. Do you have a plan to eat that, or are you just going to dive in and hope for the best? He asked, amused. I'm improvising. Sometimes the best plan is no plan at all. That explains a lot about you. Hey, I do have plans. They're just flexible, chaotic, creative. Caitlin finally managed a bite. See? It worked. Jordan shook his head, smiling. It was strange to see him like this, relaxed, almost happy, so different from the cold man who used to buy hot dogs from her months ago. Can I ask you something? Caitlin said after a few minutes. Sure. Why did you buy hot dogs for me every day? 6 months, same time, same order. Why? Jordan was quiet, turning his coffee cup in his hands, because it was the only part of my day that felt real. Real? Everything in my life was controlled. Schedules, meetings, cases, decisions. But those 5 minutes at your cart were simple. No complications. Just a hot dog and someone who didn't treat me like a judge. I treated you like an annoying customer. Exactly. It was refreshing. Caitlin laughed. You're very strange, you know that? I've heard that before. They finished eating and walked back to the parking lot. Caitlin, Jordan said when they reached his car. I need to tell you something. His serious tone made her stomach tighten. What? I got a call this morning, before the hearing, from the federal court. And? They want to talk to me about returning to the bench, officially. If Caitlin felt like she'd been punched. She knew this was coming, but not so soon. That's great, Jordan. It's what you always wanted. It is. He looked right at her. But it also means leaving Pinnacle, leaving this job, leaving working with you. We knew this would happen eventually. Knowing doesn't make it easier. There was something in his voice, a kind of vulnerability Caitlin had never heard before. She swallowed hard. When's the meeting? Monday. If I say yes, I'll be back on the bench in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Just 2 more weeks working together. Are you going to say yes? Caitlin asked, already knowing the answer. I don't know. Before I would have said yes without thinking. But now what? Jordan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Now I'm not sure I want that life anymore. That coldness, that distance from everything and everyone. I don't know if I'm still that person. Caitlin felt something tighten in her chest. Jordan, you have to do what's right for you. Not for me. Not for Pinnacle. For you. And what if I don't know what's right for me? Then find out. But don't make decisions out of fear of change or nostalgia for the past. They stood there for a moment, looking at each other, and Caitlin realized just how much things had changed. The man she had once hated was now someone she didn't want to see go. Let's get back to the office, she finally said. Lincoln's probably wondering where we are. The next day, Caitlin was reviewing documents when her phone rang. Unknown number again. Caitlin Lowe, she answered. Miss Lowe, my name is Victoria Sterling. I'm a founding partner at Sterling & Associates. Caitlin almost dropped the phone. Sterling & Associates, the most prestigious law firm in Massachusetts. Her dream firm since she started law school. Miss Sterling, it's an honor. The pleasure is mine. I heard about your excellent work on the Diana Foster case. Your research and strategy were impressive. Thank you, but it was a team effort. Modesty doesn't suit talent, Miss Lowe. I'll be direct. We want you on our team. We're offering you a junior associate position with a salary well above market and fast-track growth opportunities. Caitlin felt her heart race. Sterling & Associates, her dream. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Can we set up a meeting next week to go over the details? Yes, of course. Yes. Perfect. My assistant will be in touch to schedule it. Welcome to Sterling, Miss Lowe. When she hung up, Caitlin sat there in shock for several minutes. Sterling & Associates, she'd made it. After everything, the fine, the struggle, the sleepless nights selling hot dogs, she had made it. But why didn't she feel happier? She found Jordan in the office library, surrounded by law books. I need to tell you something, she said. He looked up. Funny, me too. You first. Jordan closed the book he was reading. I decided to accept the offer to go back to the bench. I have a meeting on Monday, and if all goes well, I'll be back in court in 2 weeks. Caitlin forced a smile. That's amazing, Jordan. Congratulations. And you, what did you want to tell me? She took a deep breath. I got an offer from Sterling & Associates. Jordan's expression changed completely. Sterling & Associates? Caitlin, that's the top firm in Massachusetts. I know. Are you going to accept? I haven't decided yet. She sat next to him. It's everything I've ever wanted. Since my first day of law school, Sterling & Associates has been my goal. But But I just started here at Pinnacle. Lincoln believed in me when no one else did. It feels wrong to just walk away now. Jordan watched her for a long moment. Caitlin, you don't owe me anything, and you don't owe Pinnacle anything either. If Sterling is your dream, go after it. And you, is going back to being a judge still your dream? It used to be. Now, I'm not so sure. They sat there in silence, both facing decisions that would change their lives completely. It's funny, Caitlin finally said. A few months ago, I hated you. You destroyed everything I'd worked for. And now? And now? And now you're the person whose opinion matters most to me. Jordan took her hand, a simple but intimate gesture. The feelings mutual. They looked at each other, and something passed between them. Something beyond co-workers, beyond friendship. Caitlin. The library door opened, and Lincoln walked in, breaking the moment. There you are. I've got news. Gregory Westfield has been formally charged. The trial starts in 3 weeks. Caitlin and Jordan quickly pulled their hands apart. That's great, Jordan said, his voice back to professional mode. And there's more, Lincoln continued. Jordan, I got a call from the federal court. They want you back. It's official. Congratulations. Thank you, Lincoln. Lincoln looked between the two of them, sensing the tension. Everything okay here? Perfectly fine, Caitlin answered a little too quickly. After Lincoln left, Jordan turned to her. We need to talk, really talk, about all of this. I know, but not now, not here. So when? Tomorrow night? We can have dinner and figure things out. Jordan nodded. Tomorrow night. But they both knew they weren't just talking about career decisions. They were talking about the two of them. The next evening, Caitlin changed outfits 4 times before finally settling on a simple emerald green dress. It wasn't a date, she kept telling herself, just dinner between colleagues to talk about their professional futures. So why was her heart beating like it was the first day of school? Jordan picked her up at 7, driving a different car than usual. Not the sleek black Audi, but a more modest silver sedan. New car? Caitlin asked as she got in. Borrowed from a friend. Mine's in the shop. He looked at her and seemed to forget what he was going to say next. You look different. Different good or different what happened to you? Different beautiful. Caitlin felt her face warm. Oh, thanks. You look less grumpy than usual. Jordan laughed. Less grumpy, I'll take that as a compliment. They went to a small, cozy Italian restaurant away from downtown. The kind of place where no one would recognize them, where they could just be 2 people having dinner. So, Caitlin began after they ordered, are we going to talk about the elephant in the room? Which one? There are several. All of them. You going back to being a judge, me possibly going to Sterling, and, she hesitated, whatever this is between us. Jordan took a sip of wine. Straight to the point. I admire that. Someone has to be. You dance around it until the end of time. Probably. He set the glass down. All right, let's start with the professional stuff. You should take the offer from Sterling. I should? No question. It's the opportunity of a lifetime, Caitlin. The most prestigious firm in Massachusetts wants you. That doesn't happen every day. What about you? Are you going to take the judge position back? Jordan was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I'm not sure anymore. Part of me wants to go back, to reclaim what I lost. But another part what? Another part wonders if maybe I lost it for a reason. Maybe it was time for a change. Caitlin leaned forward. Jordan Hoffman doubting himself? That's new. You do that to me. You make me question everything. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Still figuring that out. The food arrived, and for a few minutes they ate in comfortable silence. It was Caitlin who finally brought up the real topic. And what about the other elephant? What's going on between us? Jordan set his fork down. What do you think is going on? I don't know. A few months ago, I hated you. You were the man who ruined my life. And now I can't picture a day without arguing with you over something ridiculous. I miss the arguing, too. That's kind of sad. It is. Jordan reached across the table and took her hand. Caitlin, I'm not good at this. With feelings, with connection. I spent so long being the impartial judge, I forgot how to just be human. You're being human now. I'm trying. He gently brushed her fingers. But I have to be honest. I don't know if I can give you what you deserve. I don't know if I know how to make this work. Caitlin felt something tighten in her chest. So you don't know what we are? I know what I want us to be. I just don't know if I'm capable of getting us there." That was incredibly vague and frustrating. "I know. Sorry." Caitlin gently pulled her hand back. "Look, I get being scared. I am too, but we can't stay in this limbo forever. Either we try to figure this out together or we go our separate ways." "And what if we try and it doesn't work?" "And what if we try and it does?" Jordan looked at her with an intensity that made the air feel heavy. "Have you always been this brave?" "No. But selling hot dogs while going to law school taught me fear doesn't pay the bills. You act even when you're afraid." "Wise." "Annoyingly persistent is the term you usually use." They laughed, and the tension eased a little. They finished dinner talking about lighter things, bad movies they loved, strange foods they hated, places they wanted to visit. When Jordan drove her home, he stopped in front of her building but didn't turn off the engine. "Caitlin," he began, "I need some time to think about everything. The court, Sterling, us." "How much time?" "I don't know. A few days? A week?" She nodded, swallowing her disappointment. "All right, think." "But Jordan?" "Yes. Don't overthink it. Sometimes the best decisions come from the heart, not the head." He gave her a sad smile. "My heart's a bit rusty from lack of use. Then it's time to oil it up." Caitlin opened the door. "Good night, Jordan." "Good night." She was almost at her building's door when she heard his voice. "Caitlin?" She turned. Jordan had gotten out of the car. "I'm not good with words when it comes to this, but I want you to know you've changed something in me, something I thought was gone." Caitlin felt her eyes sting. "That was almost romantic. You're getting better." "I'm trying." She came back, stood on tiptoe, and kissed his cheek quickly. "Keep trying." In the days that followed, Caitlin barely saw Jordan. He was busy with meetings at the court, preparing for his official return. She, on the other hand, had a meeting scheduled with Victoria Sterling to go over the contract details. The office of Sterling and Associates was just as she imagined, elegant, modern, with success in every corner. Victoria Sterling was an impressive woman in her 50s, with perfectly styled gray hair and a gaze that seemed to read souls. "Miss Lowe, thank you for coming," Victoria said, shaking her hand firmly. "I'll be direct. We want you here. Your work on the Foster case showed exactly the kind of strategic thinking we value." "I'm honored, but I need to be honest. I was just promoted at Pinnacle. Leaving them now feels disrespectful." "Caitlin, may I call you Caitlin?" She nodded, and Victoria continued. "Lincoln Palmer is a good man, but Pinnacle has its limits. Here, you'd have unlimited resources, high-profile cases, and a clear path to partner in 5 years." 5 years? "If you prove to be as good as we believe you are, and I'm sure you are." Victoria slid the contract across the table. "Take your time to read it. Talk it over with whoever you need to. But know that opportunities like this don't come around twice." Caitlin picked up the contract, feeling its weight, both literally and figuratively. That night, she was home rereading every clause when her phone rang. It was Jordan. "Hi," she answered. "Hi, are you busy?" "Just selling my soul to the corporate legal world. Nothing major." "Meeting with Sterling went well?" "It did. They want to make me a partner in 5 years, if I'm good enough." "You will be." The confidence in his voice warmed her. "And you? How was court?" "Official. I go back Monday as a federal judge." Caitlin felt her heart sink even though she knew it was coming. "Congratulations, really." "Thanks, Caitlin. I've been thinking about everything." "And? Can we talk in person tomorrow?" "Sure." "Where?" "There's a place I want to show you." The next day, Jordan took her to a small park by the river. It was quiet, almost empty on a weekday afternoon. "I used to come here when I was deciding whether to become a judge," he explained as they walked. "This place helps me think. It's beautiful. It's honest. No pretensions." He stopped near a bench under a tree. "Caitlin, I've made a decision." Her stomach tightened. "I'm listening." "I'm going back to being a judge. Not because I want my old life back, but because I realized I can be a different kind of judge now. More human, more fair, in the real sense of the word." "That's a good thing, Jordan. And about us?" He hesitated. "I want to try. I don't know how it'll work with you at Sterling and me in court, but I want to try." Caitlin felt tears prick at her eyes. "Really? You taught me that fear isn't a reason not to act, so I'm acting." She hugged him right there, in the middle of the park, not caring who might see. "So does this mean we're," she asked against his chest, "it means we're figuring it out, together." I can live with that. But that same night, everything changed. Caitlin got a call from Lincoln. Gregory Westfield had offered a deal to the prosecution. He would testify against others involved in corruption schemes in exchange for a reduced sentence. And one of the names he gave was someone very close to Jordan. Someone who could destroy everything all over again. Caitlin arrived at the office the next morning earlier than usual. Lincoln was already there with a serious expression she rarely saw. "Sit down, Caitlin." She obeyed, her stomach tight. "Who's the person close to Jordan that Westfield mentioned?" Lincoln slid a folder across the desk. "Thomas Blake. Jordan's best friend since law school. They were practically inseparable." Caitlin felt the air leave her lungs. What did he do? According to Westfield, Blake was involved in the bribery scheme that led to the false complaint against Jordan. Blake was the one who allegedly provided confidential information about Jordan's cases to help fabricate the accusation. That doesn't make sense. Why would his best friend do that? Money. Westfield paid him well, and apparently Blake had huge gambling debts. Lincoln sighed. The worst part is, Jordan trusted him completely, shared case details, asked for advice. Caitlin stood up abruptly. "I have to tell Jordan." "No." Lincoln raised his hand. "This is still confidential. The prosecution doesn't want anything to leak before they have solid evidence. But Jordan deserves to know, and he will, in due time. For now, you need to stay quiet." Caitlin spent the rest of the day in agony. When Jordan stopped by the office late in the afternoon to pick up some documents, she could barely look at him. "Hey," he said, walking over with a smile that still felt new on his face. "You okay? You seem worried." "I'm fine. Just a lot of work." Jordan studied her for a moment. "Are you sure? Because you're doing that thing with your eyebrow, the one you do when you're hiding something." "What thing?" "That." He pointed. "You frown just a little and bite your lip." "I don't do that." "You do. I've seen you do it at least 20 times. Caitlin forced a laugh. "You pay way too much attention to me." "More than I should." He gently touched her face. "Are you sure everything's okay?" She wanted to scream the truth. Tell him about Blake, about Westfield, about all of it. But she had given Lincoln her word. "I'm just tired. A lot of big decisions to make." "About Sterling?" "Among other things." Jordan kissed her forehead, a warm and intimate gesture. "Whatever decision you make, I'll be here." The guilt burned in her chest as she watched him walk away. In the days that followed, Caitlin tried to stay busy. She wrapped up her last cases at Pinnacle and prepared for her transition to Sterling, but her mind kept drifting back to the moment Jordan would find out the truth about Thomas Blake. 5 days later, the bomb dropped. The district attorney's office publicly announced the charges against Thomas Blake. Headlines screamed about the betrayal of the best friend who had destroyed the career of an honest judge. Caitlin tried calling Jordan all morning. He didn't answer. Finally, in the middle of the afternoon, he showed up at the office. His face was pale, his eyes like he hadn't slept. "You knew?" were his first words. Caitlin felt her heart break. "Jordan, you knew," he repeated. It wasn't a question anymore. "Lincoln told you and you didn't tell me." "I couldn't. It was confidential." "You let me find out from the news." "From the damn headlines, Caitlin." His voice cracked. "My best friend betrayed me for money, and you knew." "I wanted to tell you, but Lincoln said if I talked, it could compromise the entire investigation." "This wasn't about the investigation. It was about me, about us." He ran his hands over his face. "I trusted you, and I was protecting you. If I'd said anything before the evidence was solid, Blake could have run or destroyed everything." Jordan let out a bitter laugh. "How ironic. You did the same thing I did to you. You followed the law by the book and ignored the human side." That comparison hit like a slap. "It's not the same," Caitlin said, her voice trembling. "It's not? You chose to follow orders instead of protecting me. I chose to follow the law instead of giving you a chance. What's the difference?" "The difference is, I did it to help you in the long run." "Don't help me like that." Jordan walked toward the door. "Maybe you were right all along. Maybe I really am just a cold man who doesn't know how to care about people." You're not thinking straight." "I'm thinking more clearly than ever." He stopped at the door without turning around. "Good luck at Sterling, Caitlin. You'll do great there." "Jordan, wait, please." But he was already gone. Caitlin sat down in her chair shaking. She didn't cry. Not yet. She had to keep it together. Lincoln showed up in the doorway a few minutes later. "He knows," was all she could say. "I saw him leaving." Lincoln came in and shut the door. "Caitlin, you did the right thing. Blake was going to be arrested today either way. If you'd told Jordan earlier, he might have warned Blake. I lost Jordan by doing the right thing. You didn't lose him. He just needs time to process. Blake's betrayal cut deep. Jordan's turning that pain on you because it's easier than admitting he trusted the wrong person for years." What if he doesn't come back? Lincoln had no answer to that. The next day, Caitlin signed her contract with Sterling and Associates. She'd be starting in 2 weeks. It was everything she'd ever wanted, but it felt empty without Jordan to share it with. A week later, Jordan was officially reinstated as a federal judge. Caitlin saw the photos online. He looked serious, formal, distant. The old Jordan was back, and she was no longer part of his life. On her last day at Pinnacle, the team threw a small farewell. There was cake, hugs, promises to stay in touch. But Caitlin felt like she was leaving more than just a job. She was leaving the place where she and Jordan had reconnected, where they had built something together. Lincoln pulled her aside for a private word before she left. "Sterling's lucky to have you," he said. "But don't forget where you came from. Don't forget how hard you fought for your place here." "I never will. And Caitlin, about Jordan, he'll realize what he lost, sooner or later." "I hope so, but I can't wait forever." Her first day at Sterling and Associates was intense. Modern office, large team, high-profile cases. Victoria Sterling assigned her to a big case right away. Defense of Jennifer Walsh, an executive accused of insider trading, Victoria explained. "It's complicated. Trial starts in 3 weeks. The judge is known for being tough." "Who's the judge?" Victoria checked the file. "Jordan Hoffman, just returned to the bench." Caitlin felt the ground slip beneath her. "Is that a problem?" Victoria asked. "No. No problem." A lie. In the weeks that followed, Caitlin threw herself into the case. She studied every detail, every precedent, every possible argument, but nothing prepared her for the day of the trial. When she stepped into the courtroom, Jordan was already seated at the bench. Black robe, straight posture, unreadable expression. Their eyes met for a split second. Pain, longing, hurt, but also professionalism. "Court is now in session," Jordan announced, striking the gavel. "Case number 4521. State versus Jennifer Walsh. Is the defense present?" Caitlin stood up, holding back her emotions. "Yes, Your Honor." Caitlin Lowe representing the defendant. And just like that, it began. The two of them, face to face again. But this time, everything was different. The trial of Jennifer Walsh lasted 3 days. 3 days where Caitlin and Jordan maintained absolute professional distance. He ran the courtroom with his usual precision. She delivered brilliant arguments that impressed everyone present. But they didn't look directly at each other, no more than necessary. On the 3rd day, Caitlin gave her closing argument. She had found a flaw in the prosecution's case, proving that Jennifer Walsh had no prior knowledge of the insider information she was accused of using. When she finished, the courtroom fell silent. Even the prosecutor seemed impressed. Jordan struck the gavel. "The court will deliberate. Decision will be announced tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Caitlin left the courtroom exhausted. Victoria Sterling was waiting outside with a big smile. "That was masterful. If we win, you're going to be the star of the office." "If we win," Caitlin echoed, "you will." That judge may be tough, but even he can't ignore such solid arguments. The next morning, Caitlin returned to court with her stomach in knots. Jennifer Walsh sat beside her, visibly nervous, her hands trembling. Jordan entered, took his seat, and read the decision in a firm, clear voice. After careful review of the evidence and arguments presented, this court finds that the prosecution failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant had knowledge of the insider information. Jennifer Walsh is found not guilty of all charges. The room erupted in whispers. Jennifer hugged Caitlin, crying with relief, but Caitlin looked at Jordan. For a brief second, their eyes met. She saw something there. Pride? Admiration? Before she could figure it out, he looked away. Outside the courthouse, as Jennifer celebrated with her family, Caitlin felt someone behind her. "Well done, Counselor Lowe." She turned. Jordan was there, no robe, just a dark suit. "Thank you, Your Honor." "Jordan, out here, I'm just Jordan." Her heart skipped. I thought you didn't want to talk to me. I didn't, but he ran a hand through his hair. I was unfair. You were in an impossible position with Blake. I know that now. I wanted to tell you. I know. He looked around, then lowered his voice. Can we talk? Privately? They ended up in a small cafe away from the courthouse. They sat at a table in the corner, away from prying eyes. I've been thinking a lot these past few weeks, Jordan began, about everything. Blake, us, what happened. And I realized I was directing all my anger about his betrayal at you. It was easier to blame you than admit my best friend used me. Caitlin felt her eyes sting. I understand. I probably would have done the same. No, you wouldn't have. He reached for her hand across the table. You're better than me at this, at dealing with emotions, at being human. Jordan, let me finish, please. He took a breath. When I saw you in that courtroom, making those arguments, all I could think about was how much you've grown, how you've become the incredible attorney I always knew you'd be. You taught me a lot of that. No, that was always in you. I just happened to be there when you found it. They sat in silence for a moment, hands entwined on the table. So what do we do now? Caitlin finally asked. You're a judge. I'm a lawyer. We're going to keep running into each other in court. I know, and that complicates everything. More than complicates. It makes it nearly impossible. If anyone finds out we have had something, every decision you make on my cases will be questioned. Jordan squeezed her hand. So what are you saying? I'm saying maybe you were right. Maybe we were fooling ourselves thinking this could work. Do you really believe that? Caitlin looked at him, at those gray eyes that once been so cold, now filled with emotion. No, but I don't know how to make it work without putting our careers at risk. What if we didn't care about careers? You do. I do. There's no use pretending we don't. Jordan let go of her hand and leaned back in his chair. So we're stuck. I want you. You want me, but we can't be together. Not while you're a judge and I'm a practicing attorney in Massachusetts. That's frustrating. It's a nightmare. They laughed, without joy. We could keep it quiet, Jordan suggested. No one has to know. Secrets always come out, and when they do, everything we've built comes crashing down. Caitlin shook her head. I can't do that. I can't live afraid of being found out. So what do we do? I don't know. I really don't. Victoria Sterling called that evening, thrilled with the win. Caitlin, you're brilliant. I already have 3 high-profile cases lined up for you. One of them goes to trial next month. That's great. Who's the judge? They haven't assigned one yet, but it'll probably be Catherine Walsh or Jordan Hoffman. Caitlin closed her eyes. Of course. Perfect, she lied. Over the next few weeks, Caitlin and Jordan saw each other in court 3 more times. Always professional, always distant. But the looks were still there, those fleeting glances when no one was watching, those moments when the world seemed to disappear and it was just the 2 of them. It was during the 4th case that everything changed. Caitlin was presenting emotion when she stumbled over a word, something small, unimportant, but when she corrected herself, she instinctively looked at Jordan. And he was smiling. That small, private smile he reserved only for her. In that moment, Caitlin knew. It didn't matter how much time passed, how many rules existed, how many obstacles stood in the way. She was completely in love with Jordan Hoffman, and from the way he looked at her, the feeling was mutual. After the hearing, he followed her out to the parking lot. Caitlin, wait. She stopped, heart pounding. Jordan, we can't do this. Not here, not now. I know, but I need to say something. What? He looked around to make sure they were alone. I'm tired of pretending, tired of acting like I don't feel anything when I see you. Me too. But, no buts. I love you, Caitlin. I know it's complicated, I know the rules are there for a reason, but I can't deny it anymore. The words hit her like a wave. You, what? I love you. Probably since that day at the hot dog stand when you served me with that look like you wanted to throw me out. Caitlin laughed, tears in her eyes. I really did. I know, and somehow that made me like you even more. Jordan, I love you too. But that doesn't fix our problem. It doesn't. But it's a start. He stepped closer. Can we figure out the rest together? Caitlin knew she should say no. She knew it was risky, complicated, potentially disastrous for both their careers. But when Jordan looked at her that way, nothing else mattered. Yes, she whispered. Let's try. He kissed her right there in the courthouse parking lot where anyone could see them. And in that moment, Caitlin didn't care. But what they didn't know was that someone had seen, and that person wasn't going to stay quiet. 3 days later, Victoria Sterling called Caitlin in for an urgent meeting. When she walked in, it wasn't just Victoria. 2 other senior partners were there too. "Have a seat, Caitlin," Victoria said, her tone formal. Caitlin's stomach dropped. She knew. "We received an anonymous tip," Victoria began, "alleging that you're in a personal relationship with Judge Jordan Hoffman." Caitlin felt her blood run cold. "I can explain." "No need to explain anything. Your personal life is your own." Victoria leaned in. "But I need to know if it's true, because if it is, every case he's ruled on with you could be called into question." Caitlin took a deep breath. Lying would have been easy, but she was tired of hiding. "It's true. Jordan and I have feelings for each other." The 3 partners exchanged looks. "Since when?" one of them asked. "It's complicated. We worked together at Pinnacle before he went back to the bench. The feelings started then." Victoria sighed. "Caitlin, do you understand how serious this is?" "I do, but I've never let it affect my work. Every argument I made was based on merit, not favoritism." "I believe you," Victoria said, "but public perception is what matters. We need a solution. What do you suggest?" "Full transparency. Announce the relationship officially and recuse yourself from any case where Jordan is the judge." Caitlin called Jordan right after the meeting. "They know," she said when he picked up. "Someone told Sterling. I got a call from the judicial board too. They're questioning my impartiality." They met that evening in the park by the river. "So what do we do?" Caitlin asked. Jordan took her hand. "We do it differently. No hiding, no lying. We disclose the relationship and set clear ethical boundaries. People will talk. Let them talk. We know the truth." The next day, Jordan submitted a formal statement to the judicial board, explaining the relationship and pledging to recuse himself from any case involving Caitlin or Sterling. She did the same at her firm. The response was surprisingly positive. Victoria even smiled. "That was mature and professional. You're staying here, Caitlin. Now show me you're as good as I know you are." In the weeks that followed, Caitlin won 3 major cases. None of them were judged by Jordan. Her reputation was growing on its own merit. Jordan maintained his integrity as a judge, respected and admired. And together, between quiet dinners and peaceful weekends, they were building something solid. One Friday, Jordan showed up at her office with a small suitcase. "Pack your things. We're going away." Caitlin looked up from the documents. "Going where?" "It's a surprise. All I know is you need a weekend away from legal briefs, and I need a weekend away from robes." Jordan Hoffman being spontaneous? "Who are you, and what did you do with the grumpy judge?" "He's slowly retiring. Now come on, before I change my mind." 3 hours later, they were in Cape Cod. At a small seaside inn. The room had an ocean view, and the sound of the waves was the only thing they could hear. "How did you find this place?" Caitlin asked, amazed. "I used to come here when I was younger, before I became the serious, boring judge you met." "You were never boring, just overly professional." "Same thing." They spent Saturday walking along the beach, barefoot, in the cool sand. Jordan told college stories Caitlin never would have imagined. She shared funny disasters from her hot dog cart days. "You know what's funny?" Jordan said as they watched the sunset. "If you hadn't gotten that fine, none of this would have happened." "True. I'd still be selling hot dogs and you'd still be the robotic judge." "I wasn't robotic." "You totally were. You used to order mustard and onions like you were handing down a verdict." Jordan laughed. "I'll admit I was lacking human warmth." "Well, now you've got plenty of human warmth." Caitlin rested her head on his shoulder. "Who would have thought the cold judge would turn out to be the kindest person I've ever met? And who would have thought the hot dog vendor would become the brightest attorney in Massachusetts? Hey, I was always brilliant. You were just slow to notice." "True, but I did notice eventually." On Sunday, before heading back, they had breakfast at a small restaurant with a view of the sea. "Thank you for this," Caitlin said. "For pulling me out of the routine, for reminding me there's life outside the courtroom." We both needed it. Jordan took her hand across the table. "Caitlin, I don't know exactly where we're headed, but I know I want to go there with you. Even with all the complications, the rules, the judgments, the gossip, especially because of that. Because if we can get through all that and still be here, then it's worth it. Caitlin smiled, her eyes a little misty. You're getting romantic. Careful, your tough judge reputation is in danger. To hell with my reputation. Look at that, Jordan Hoffman swearing. The end is near. They laughed together, and in that moment, everything made sense. They had proven that love and professionalism could coexist. That rules existed, but so did flexibility. That the harder path sometimes led to the most rewarding destination. The hot dog vendor who became a brilliant attorney. The millionaire judge who learned how to be human. Two paths that never should have crossed, but somehow, fate brought them together. And together they were building a story that was uniquely theirs. No perfect endings, no impossible promises. Just two hearts, choosing to fight for what they felt, one day at a time. What did you think of Caitlin and Jordan's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to keep up with all our stories. And check out more touching stories by clicking right here on the end screen.